months back, Union Petroleum Minister Dharmendra Pradhan requested the Ministry of Finance to consider bringing petroleum products under GST.
GST should cover all the petroleum products. We are sincerely appealing to the state government, to the GST Council, to look into this issue.
2 months later, the GST Council held its second meet in Guwahati but took no decisions on this recommendation, one that could have had far-reaching implications on household budgets. Citizens pay an average of 67 rupees on petrol across mega cities. Mumbai pays the maximum, about 76 rupees per litre of petrol. But if it were to come under GST, prices would nosedive. Back-of-the-envelope calculations show that even if petrol is taxed under GST's highest tax bracket of 28%, the price could come down to 38 rupees per litre, a saving of almost 40 rupees per litre of petrol.
If petrol price agar kam ho gaye, means it will be under the GST, then it would be beneficial for us, I guess.
अगर पेट्रोल GST के अंडर आता है तो ये नॉर्मल पब्लिक के लिए बहुत अच्छा हो जाएगा. 30 रुपये कम हो जाएगा.
पेट्रोल के भाव डेफिनेटली GST के अंदर आनी चाहिए, क्योंकि GST के अंदर अगर पेट्रोल का रेट आता है तो लगभग 30-40 रुपये का डिफरेंस तो आएगा.
On Mirror Now, we demand cheaper fuel. We demand that India gets the complete benefit of one nation, one tax. We demand that petroleum products be brought under the GST. Mirror Now report.
Good evening, you're watching the Urban Debate on Mirror Now. I'm Faye D'Souza. Thank you for joining us. Should petrol and diesel be brought under GST? Well, the Union Minister for Petroleum seems to think so. The Finance Minister agrees with him. And if that's the case, can it be done? Is it possible? Will all of the opposition states, the states run by opposition parties, agree? Will the various state governments agree to give up the massive benefits that they're making right now on petrol and diesel from the kind of taxes that we're being charged? I want to remind our viewers, 12 lakh crore rupees on last count is what the central government is making from petrol and diesel, and another 12 lakh crore rupees is what the states are making on petrol and diesel every year. Will they give that up in order for you and me to be slightly more comfortable with our household budgets? And if we really do believe in one nation, one tax, then shouldn't the minister's appeal, the Union Minister's appeal of GST under petrol under GST be brought into the fore? Joining me on the show this evening, Narendra Taneja, spokesperson of the BJP, Sanjay Jha for the Congress Party, S.C. Tripathi, former Oil Secretary, Mohan Guruswamy, economist, chairperson and founder of the Centre for Policy Alternatives and also advisor to former Finance Minister Yashwant Sinha, and Ved Jain, former chairperson of the Institute for Chartered Accountants of India. Ali H. Daruwala is a spokesperson of the All India Petrol Dealers Association. We're just discussing for and against, does it make sense to bring petrol and diesel under GST? And how is that going to be possible? Will all political parties come on board, all state governments come on board at this point? Opening remarks from Narendra Taneja of the BJP. Will petrol be brought under the GST? Is it possible, Mr. Taneja?
Well, you see, I agree with you that we need to rationalize taxes. And when we talk of one nation, one tax, it's important we bring petrol and diesel under GST. And that's not only the intent of the government, that's the declared policy of the government. It has been declared at various levels, and that's our policy. We want to bring petrol and diesel under GST because we consider that's the only way, in fact, the only way to move forward and in order to bring absolute transparency and also to rationalize taxes. And this has been put by us on the table of GST. That's been done by us. At the same time, we are trying to persuade as many state governments so that we can take a view on that and we can move forward with that. Because as I said, that what is important today is that is brought under that, because there is no other way that we can make sure that everything, all numbers with regard to how taxes are calculated, how taxes are paid. Everything is absolutely transparent. So in case people have any question, and the people have the right to know, so that the answers are there for everybody to see. It's not only with the center, it's not only with the state, that will be under the GST Council, and all decisions will be taken in the most transparent manner, and at the same time in a way that people can understand. It's a commodity which is crucial to the national economy. It's a commodity at the same time crucial to even the domestic economy, a majority of Indians. Therefore, it is important that we move in that direction, and that's the government commitment, and we are doing everything possible in order to basically deliver on this particular commitment of the government. But as you know, this is not only the central government. GST Council means the center plus all the states. So it has been put on the table, and it's our sincere effort to implement, to bring petrol and diesel under GST on priority.
Mr. Thaneja, would you be able to tell us which of the states are opposing this right now?
No, I don't really think that, I am privy to that information. The only thing is that all decisions under GST councils are taken as, unanimously. Where people may come out, political parties may come out, they may say different things, their spokesmen may say different things, but the fact is that in GST, all decisions are taken unanimously, which I think is a very good tradition. But as far as which states are opposing, which states have got issues, how they are looking at all these things, I'm not privy to all those details. But I think sooner or later all those things will also come out, because there are going to be discussions by and states. Some states do have reservations, that all I know, and their reservations in terms of, especially states which are kind of more heavily dependent on petroleum sector for their revenues, and that includes some of the states which are not doing so well economically. But I honestly don't know which state, which stand. Right. I think we'll have to wait for, I'm not the right person to answer this question.
Right. I just want to share some numbers. According to what we understand, in the GST Council, you have to get a total of 3/4 of the votes in order to pass any decision. Now, half of that, of the entire vote is reserved by the central government. Out of the remaining 31 votes, 14 belong to NDA allies or BJP-run states. So are we to understand, Mr. Thaneja, that BJP-run states as well right now are not supporting this move to move petrol under GST? Because if they were, if all NDA BJP-run states were supporting, you'd be able to do this. You didn't have to ask anyone.
We live in a democracy. There may be BJP government. For the sake of discussion, state X may be run by BJP, but they have been elected by the people of that state based on their local manifesto, local commitment. So it's BJP government. But in democracy, whatever the mandate that they have got or the commitment they have made to the promises they have to, and plus they have their own economy to run. Similarly, so yes, they're part of the BJP NDA family, you are absolutely right. But that's not how internal democracy functions. These states have their own budgets, have their own way of looking at things, and at the same time their own concerns with regard to the people and their overall economy. So I think when you go by the experience, whether in the past since independence or now, all states basically go and protect their own state interest, as we usually call in international relations protecting your national interest. Similarly, they protect their state interest. That's how democracy functions, and that's the way it should be.
I don't know if that's a completely fair comparison to compare us to international relations, because we're still one country and we should all come together. Ved Jain is shaking his head. Mr. Ved Jain, former chairperson of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. Why do you not agree?
See, there are two issues which we need to address first on the basic issues. Political party may have their own compulsion, because now GST is the matter of the day, issue of the day. Nobody can say we are not for GST. But one has to understand the ground realities and the two aspects. You raise a very important issue, why not the GST Council and the government is going ahead with this. First is, where there is a will, there is always a way. Now, as on date, in case GST is implemented on petroleum products, the government of India central government has already assured the state government for the next 5 years that they will get the revenue what they were getting on the base on 15-16 revenue, a 14% increase thereon. So there can't be any issue. But the most important issue is the fundamental, the revenue being collected today. In 16-17, the total excise duty collected from the petroleum products on which GST is supposed to be implemented was 246,000 crores, and the VAT collected by the different state was somewhere 1,46,000 crore. So meaning thereby 4,08,000 crore rupees of excise duty and VAT has been collected in the last year, and this year this figure is going to be 450,000 crore. Now when we look at the prices, the price on the petroleum of 72 rupees, 36 rupees is the basic cost price plus transportation plus dealer commission, and 36 rupees is the excise duty and the VAT, which is roughly 21 rupees excise duty and 15 rupees is the VAT. Now that means as on date the GST rate on petroleum product is 100%, 36 plus 36. If tomorrow the central government takes a call and the GST council takes a call, let us bring the petroleum products within the GST network, then in case they fix up the maximum rate of 28% also, the revenue collection, which is 450,000 crore by 100% rate, will come down to 1,12,000 crore rupees. So there will be a revenue loss of rupees 3,36,000 crore rupees, which is a very huge loss of the revenue. The center cannot afford to compensate the state government for that revenue. If the fiscal deficit will go haywire. So that's a compulsion we need to understand. The economy in the last 3 years has become heavily dependent. The revenue has become heavily dependent on the collection of the excise duty from the petroleum product, and in the process, because the prices of the petroleum product has gone up, the state government has got benefited by levying VAT. Because when we look at the number from 2014 to 2017, the center has got an increase in excise duty of more than 300%, which used to be somewhere less than 1 lakh crore, has now almost touching 3 lakh crore, where the state's VAT has, which used to be roughly 1 lakh crore or 1,20,000 crore, has gone to 1,70,000 crore. So it is a catch-22 position. I do not see in immediate future that GST can cover up petroleum product, because the revenue compulsion will not permit the central government or the GST council to bring into the GST net. And as I said earlier, in case the intention is there, where there is a will, there is a way, there is no issue, because when the GST council can decide to reduce the rate from 127 to 50 item from 28% to 18%, and when we know that the petroleum is already amendment in the constitution permit to bring petroleum product, it is only a decision by the GST council it could have bring it. But when the number you will look into the fiscal deficit and the revenue fall, it will not permit the GST council to take a decision to bring petrol and petroleum product, unless GST council say the GST rate on petrol and petroleum will be roughly 100% of the price.
Right, and I just want to. So what Mr. Faye told us very clearly is that while earlier the margin used to be about this much and everybody said, okay, if you compensate, we'll let it go. Over the last 1 year, because of the lower prices of crude, the margin became that much, which is what the states and the center are making off the fuel prices that we pay. Because the fuel actually costs about 30 rupees, but we are paying currently close to 76 in Mumbai, 73 in Hyderabad, 72 in Chennai, 69 in Delhi. So that remaining 30 rupees is what they're making off us. And now suddenly nobody wants to let it go. So nobody wants to make that uncomfortable decision. Mohan Guruswamy, do you believe that petrol should be brought under GST? Because honestly, the average Indian can't handle it anymore. The economy is weak. We're not making that much money. Everything is too expensive. Inflation is really high. Shouldn't the government just push this through?
Just like we have our budgets, the government has its own budget. The main business of government is to collect taxes and spend it on people, which it tries to do to the best of its ability. Now, if its incomes don't go up, which is tax revenues, then it won't be able to spend on you. So if you give away something on fuel prices, you have to take away something from somebody else. Now, that is a reality you've got to live with. The petroleum contributes to 25% of indirect taxes. That's the central government's revenues. Total revenues of the states and the centre is about 5.5 lakh crores. It's a huge hole. I admit it is 107% of the fuel petrol cost is in taxes. But if you reduce the cost of petrol, the imports of petrol will go up. That means your trade deficit will go up. And there are all kinds of issues involved, current account deficit and all these things which will happen. And because petrol consumption will go up. Now, these are things which the government has to manage. And you've got this big revenue hole to cover. If you give it away to GST, which means that you're going to give away something like 3 lakh crores. So, you'll have to put a cess. So you can put it to a GST council of 28% and add 55% cess to it. There is no option really for the government to do anything in a hurry. They have to do this if they want to roll back petroleum prices and say we will reduce the taxes on it, then it will have to be done on a longer span, 5 years, 10 years, something like that. You want to do it slowly because otherwise you'll have withdrawal symptoms. Government might collapse. You have no money to spend. As it is, they're broke. The capital expenditure to the budget ratio is falling. It's 9%. And if you don't get your expenditures up, you won't get growth. If you don't get growth, you won't get employment. If you don't get growth, you won't get taxes. So you're looking at a cycle which you have to be very careful with. Pandering to consumer demands. And this whole thing that is, it costs only 30 rupees and we're paying 70 rupees is a good argument. But governments have to live and government have to make a living. Please consider that also.
Sanjay Jha, where do you stand?
Faye, let me tell you straightforward. The government has had a massive oil bonanza in the form of a tailwind of the global oil prices being so low for the last 3.5 years. Now, the truth is that the government imposed those excise duties because it's what a lazy government usually does. It's an essential commodity. It has an inelastic demand. So even if prices go up, the demand is not going to kind of correspondingly fall down. As a result, the government built up a substantial treasury and coffers. The truth is, and this is the hard point, is what did the government do with all the 3 lakh crores per annum that it saved in terms of, or rather it actually exploited the common man by raising excise duties, despite the fact that it was already having a benefit of a falling current account deficit because the oil prices were falling low. Now, I think the crux of the problem is very straightforward. Are we suggesting here today that the government happily, hunky-dory, continues to, kind of tax the common man irrespective of the global oil prices? We continue to actually provide more revenues to the government, which without having to lift a finger, just has to keeping his taxes rising by, very intangible numbers. Nobody even knows how much he's going to pay his tax. So the truth is the government at some point has to have democratic accountability. I think this is the point that, Faye, I believe we need to focus on. Are we going to say that because the government could possibly be financially, stringent, its fiscal deficit could rise? Yes, there could be serious repercussions of that. But end of day, the alternative is that you keep fleecing the common man, which, by the way, has its own deleterious downside because you're actually going to increase inflation. You are actually going to end up making, a cascading effect on the economy. Retail inflation is already rising. So the truth is, Mr. Taneja's government will have to bite the bullet. And the only way you bite the bullet is by saying, listen, I need to come clean. We have made enough money on the ordinary people who are watching the Mirror Now program. We now have to say, so we will not go any further. We will bring petroleum products under GST for the simple reason that even today, 50% of the fuel price that you and I are paying is actually in the form of taxation going to the government. So somebody has to take a call. The government cannot use the flimsy pretext that now if I were to suddenly put it under GST, we will go financially bankrupt.
Right,
I'm sorry.
I want to bring in Mr. S.C. Tripathi.
Mr. Tripathi is the that former... if international oil prices hadn't come down, the government had nothing to contribute to the economy.
I want to bring in... I want to bring in Mr. S.C. Tripathi. Mr. Tripathi is the former oil secretary.
What expenses do you suggest they reduce? What expenses do you suggest they reduce?
Mr. Guruswamy, I understand your argument, but let's say that right now, the whole point of bring fuel under GST was suggested...
Can I answer that briefly, Faye?
Was suggested by Mr. Dharmendra Pradhan, the Union Oil Minister.
Okay.
Now, couldn't the government in the meantime just shave off a little bit of excise? You're saying let's not make a drastic move, little bit of excise, little bit of VAT and allow some sort of breather to the common man instead. We're not, if you can't bring it under GST, then is there a justification for the kind of tax that we are having to pay on fuel? Isn't this just bad fiscal management from the government? They didn't manage their budget well. So we're having to pay. Is that not true, Mr. Guruswamy?
You know, you have to keep raising revenues. You know,
is this the only method, though?
In the pay commission, you gave away 1.5 lakh crores additional. Then you have areas. Big one?
Is this
you
the
have to
only
pay for
method?
all that. Where is the money going to come from? Your defense requirements have gone up. Beg your pardon? So you got to just, you know, balance your budget. You got to make money available.
No.
And if you keep giving away, you know, you just won't have any money. And you know, we've had a tradition of high petroleum taxes, not as if taxes
No, I disagree with you. And Mr. Guruswamy, allow me to bring in Mr. Tripathi. Forgive me for interrupting you. I want to bring in Mr. Tripathi because he disagrees with you. Former Oil Secretary, Mr. Tripathi, go ahead.
Okay.
Faye, there is a contrarian argument to that.
You see, 4 or 5 years ago, the proportion of taxes were much lower. Now, I do not want to enter into the polemics as to whether the government then was managing better or this government is managing better. But there is a point in the debate that with the falling oil prices, the government has benefited on many fronts. The current account deficit has got reduced, rupee has become very stable, fiscal deficit has been reduced, and the government did not pass on
any of those
reasonable share of those benefits to the consumers. It took most of it itself in raising taxes. So today we see a situation that the taxes are nearly 100% of the base price. Now 2 months ago, when there was, you know, a little bit of public outcry, a marginal reduction of 2 rupees was made, but it was not followed by states, most of the states. And even now, petrol prices have about 100% of basic prices tax. Diesel is about 70% or so. But government is committed through various statements to bring it under GST. So government should have a roadmap as to when it will be able to bring it under GST. Maybe to start with, it has a cess, and maybe it takes time, maybe it takes 2 years, maybe it takes 3 years, maybe it takes 1 year to widen its tax base. But India is a country where oil consumption, hydrocarbon consumption, and in fact energy consumption is 1/3 of world's average. No country has grown and become prosperous without increasing its energy consumption. We are doing a lot in renewable, but renewable have limitations. So our oil gas consumption will continue to grow for next 15-20 years. As somebody pointed out, the demand will remain inelastic, and therefore I think seriously the states and centre should get down to bring it under GST. At the moment, neither centre nor the states are really interested because they will lose a lot of revenue, and it's the easiest source of collection of revenue. 5-6 major companies, they are easily caught hold of, and they give all this revenue. So due to ease of collection, due to large revenue, both centre and states, they show great hesitation in bringing it under GST. And in fact, the states, they collect their revenue, their taxes based on taxes also, because for them the price is the base price plus excise duty, and then they raise their VAT. So I think there is a case for bringing it under GST. Maybe the GST rates may have to be higher, maybe with 28% and some reasonable cess of 30-40%, whatever, and then a roadmap that over a period of time this will be brought to a more reasonable level.
But I want to take the question back right now to Narendra Taneja. Narendra Taneja, just today the WPI, the wholesale inflation numbers came out. Inflation is at a 6-month high, and I'll tell you why. Vegetable prices went up 36% in the month of October. Fuel went up 10% in the month of October. That is the wholesale inflation over October the previous year. And these numbers are very, very high, Mr. Taneja. My simple question to you is, how much more do you think the average Indian can take? How much more of this burden do you expect the regular middle-class Indian to bear?
Well, I understand and appreciate you asking this question. As a TV anchor, we ask the same question. You know, we are in touch with the people. We ask the same question and we work on it. The only difference between you and us is that we also work to find a solution. Part of the reason that, prices, let's say, of onion have gone up because, the movement was effective, to move onion from the places of production to big cities. That was the reason. But going back to the issue of GST, which is our topic of discussion, this thing, I heard Mr. Guruswamy very carefully, and there's a lot of meat in what he says in his argument. And similarly, Mr. Tripathi, who has a long experience of working in the government and actually presiding over all these issues, and Mr. Sanjay Jha, and he's a politician, so his take is entirely politic. The question is that how do we move forward? As far as we are concerned, we have got a short-term, medium-term, long-term planning already in place. Long-term, we are working on it that by 2030, all major cities are going to use only electric-powered motor vehicles, which would mean that basically the consumption would actually come down substantially. But there would be another challenge for us, that how do we produce electricity? So we are working on that solution as well. Medium term is the same thing, to incentivize public transport in B cities and C cities and all that. So we are encouraging all states to come out with their plans, and we can support, we can collaborate with them to the extent possible. As far as short term is concerned, which your viewers would be more interested, that we are looking at the market very carefully. Unfortunately, crude prices, petrol prices, diesel prices internationally are going up given the geopolitical situation in the Middle East, particularly in Saudi Arabia and Venezuela and American production, so many other reasons. The prices are going up, and my sense is, since I track this very closely, that probably prices are not going to come down anytime soon. But at the same time, we have to ensure and make sure that people are in comfortable position. So we will take a view on that. And as I said, our commitment in our view is that we have no other alternative but to actually push ahead. And
so Mr. Taneja, what is your response to what Mr. Mohan Guruswamy said, which is, if you keep giving away money, where are you going to make up your budgets from? And every average Indian knows that if you spend a lot, you're going to run out of money at the end of the year or at the end of the month. If you spend your salary and you give it away in the first 10 days, you will run out of money at the end of the month. So is it not true that this government has given away money but has not figured out how to make it back?
No.
Which is what Mr. Guruswamy said.
No, that's not true. I don't think that's. Please correct me, Mr. Guruswamy, if I got you wrong. What basically my sense is what he was trying to say was that government has to balance revenue side and the expenditure side very carefully. I mean, if you really bring down that prices down rapidly, then and the government revenues at the same time, you have not really mobilized other sources.
So the government's entire plan for the year was that fuel prices will come down, crude will come down, and we'll make money off petrol. That was your entire plan for the year. So your annual budget, your union budget said these are our expenditures, and in income there was one point that said fuel prices. What about the rest of the income? Shouldn't the rest of the incomes come from other heads? Why are we relying, as most of the experts have pointed out, only on fuel prices? Was this government's entire plan hedged on the fact that crude prices would come down this year? What if crude prices didn't come down? Would you have no money at all?
No. I urge you not to be that simplistic. Ask Mr. Tripathi, those who have actually handled these things, on day-to-day basis.
I urge you not to be that condescending.
This is not how it works. It's not that you are suggesting that the government is absolutely. You are suggesting the government is absolutely irresponsible. No, in fact, the way the whole budget is managed is one of the best in the emerging economies. You just can compare India's budget with. No. Can you say it again?
I said I'm not suggesting anything. I'm asking a question. You're welcome to disagree with me. But please don't be condescending.
No, yeah. No, exactly. No. What I'm trying to say is that if you cannot bring down the structure which are in place today in terms of, the taxes by states, taxes by the center. We didn't create those structures, but we think that was done long time ago. But we think that this time has come now to basically rationalize.
All right. Okay, fair enough. I want to open this up for rebuttals right now. Ali Daruwala has not had a chance to speak. Ali Daruwala of the All India Petrol Dealers Association.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Faye, I think this government was enjoying the low crude prices. When we started this debate 3 months back, the crude price was 45. Now it's reached 62.30 paisa, $30 per barrel. I think what was in the mind was they were going to run this country by the grace of God. Now he doesn't have an answer to give you. When you asked him what is the strategy, how are you going to plan the budget, he doesn't have an answer. But let me tell you something, the party is over. Right. Now December is coming. In the winter season, the price is going to reach to 82 rupees, and their party is over. By saying that, what I mean to say is now they will start reducing. They will reduce it so it doesn't cross 80 rupees a litre. And to an extent, they say they want to bring it under GST. They will bring it under GST when it reaches $90 to $100 a barrel. This is what the plan of BJP is. And to put it on record, on Mirror Now, All India Petrol Dealer Association 1 year back had written a letter to the Honourable Minister urging him to bring petrol and diesel under the ambit of GST.
You wouldn't have been the first. Let me just open this up for rebuttals. I know Mohan Guruswamy would want to respond to what Narendra Taneja said. Which one of us understood you better, Mr. Guruswamy? Is this a household that gave away most of its money in the first 10 days of the month?
Well, look, the simple point is that, we are importing about 200 million tons of oil every year, and it's growing at about 10%. And it's an import. Most of it is import. Domestic production is very low. So you've got to keep an eye on that. You've got to keep control on imports also, in terms of tonnages also. And these rates are on the basis of litres and tons. So you've got to keep your revenue up also. We had a saving of about 3.7 or 3.8 lakh crores because of decreased oil prices. But we gave it away. We gave away in pay commission. We gave away on some new kinds of subsidies. We reduced the current account deficit, reduced various deficits, so money had to go. And your books were looking good, but it cost you money. Earlier, the books were not looking so good, and you had some more money to give away. And so, and then you got hit by all the mistakes you made on demonetization and Narega, and you had to put more money in Narega, and all these things have happened. So, it's difficult for these people now to reduce the prices and say, okay, we will go down to 50 rupees a litre. It just can't go, because the government will just collapse and topple. There are no money to pay checks, they won't have no money to pay salaries.
Tackle the rising
and they want
prices.
all these huge plans of, buying. Well, their prices are rising, and they made a noise. They will pay a political price. They were not so accommodative when prices were rising under the previous regime. Onions are now 65 rupees a kilo. Tomatoes are going up. All prices are going up. Vegetable prices are going up.
Let me also bring in Ved Jain. Let me also bring in stew prices are going up.
The two argue.
Yeah, Ved Jain.
The two are. Beg your pardon?
Mr. Ved Jain, go ahead.
Let me pitch in, Ms. D'Souza.
Yes.
See, why we are having this debate. There are two issues which I believe we are having a debate. One is whether GST, petrol and diesel will be brought in under GST. And second, what is the roadmap for the government of the day, how they are going to tackle the petroleum prices in case the international prices of crude oil goes up. These are the two important questions which we are asking a solution, and we are having this debate on. And for this, answering this question, it is very important that the government of the day took a call in the last 3 years and a half back when the crude oil prices came down, that in order to reduce the prices of the retail or oil and petrol and diesel, and to use the funds so collected for a particular purpose, so that when the prices go up, they will fill in the coffer from there. Now the issue which is arising is, having made in 2014, 13, 14, the collection was less than 1 lakh crore from the excise duty. VAT was also around 1 lakh crore. Now it has gone to more than 5 lakh crore. So 3 lakh crore you have become dependent on because of petrol and diesel. As a prudent budget making exercise, the government of the day should have been wise enough to look forward that how it is going to tackle a situation in case tomorrow the crude oil prices goes back to the same price it was there earlier. It was not a permanent fall. It was expected that this can go back earlier. Now, in case it goes back earlier, whether the people will be required to pay more on the price or they will reduce the taxes. In case they reduce the taxes, meaning thereby from where this collection will come. Meaning thereby you should have been wise enough in the 3 years to retain this money in the budget as a separate exercise rather than using it as a general pool, because that was not the objective of levying excise duty and increasing the VAT on the prices.
Let's ask Mr. Taneja if there's a plan, Mr. Taneja.
And the second thing which we are looking answer to this debate is from where we are, what is the roadmap for the GST?
That's what I said, the party is over.
Looking to this aspect today, we are very clear that in case the GST is implemented, the rate of the GST cannot be less than 100%. Even if we have a 28% GST and 25% cess, still there will be a shortfall of more than 2,50,000 crore, and that is a huge balance. So what we want to say, why
you
we
have
want
to have 55% cess.
that yes, petrol and diesel should be under the GST, knowing fully well it cannot be.
Rate?
Second, what is the roadmap for the future?
Let me ask this question. This is an important question. Narendra Taneja, and this we understand the government wants, because the Union Minister Oil and Petroleum has made the statement and the Finance Minister has made the statement that petrol and diesel have to come under GST. Come under GST at what rate? And if that doesn't happen and the rate of crude continues to go up, because that's the expectation right now, will we be paying upwards of 80 rupees per litre?
First of all, you see what should be the rate or what would be the rate. That's not for central government alone or state government alone to decide. That's a decision which will be taken by the GST Council, you know, after thorough discussions and hopefully unanimously, because that has been the tradition so far. Number two is regard to the oil prices. I have spent all my life working on this, and I'm internationally recognized for that work in predicting prices, in fact. And I don't really, when you look at demand and supply and you look at other triggers, including geopolitical triggers, I don't really see any reason to price really crude prices to go beyond a certain limit. I think, you know, probably if we can deal with about 60 on an average, that's probably is going to be the price for some time to come.
Hypothetically speaking,
because the demand is not going
okay.
up in many areas, many markets, actually demand is going down.
Never.
Yeah, demand is actually going down.
He's misguiding.
So government as
Mr. Taneja, hypothetically speaking, if the price of crude were to go up, will we be paying upwards of 80 rupees, or will the government reduce its income, is the question.
Today it went up to 70. Mr. Taneja, it went up to 70 today.
Let me
Faye, can I come in?
Faye, let me just put in one word, please.
Mr. Taneja, you seem to be misleading my audience.
Yeah, you have put in your life and you have predicted wrong.
If the price of crude moves up, will we be paying upwards of 80 rupees per litre?
I think if you... Just a second. I think it's a very serious charge when you say that I'm misleading your audience. You can do that, but I think it's an extremely serious charge, and I will request you to revisit the charge. Don't say that. We are having a debate. In a debate, if you say that I'm misleading, you know, that's, I think, a serious charge. I can use the similar language for you, but I will not do that, because that's not the how debate in media. We are having a debate in a
I am not misleading anybody, Mr. Taneja.
Means we are not in the Supreme Court. So I'm not misleading anybody. If you think I'm misleading, your viewers let your viewers take a call on that. So we are all giving our opinions, right or wrong. You know, we are giving to the best of our ability and to the best of our experience. But to answer your question, what would happen tomorrow if oil prices, crude prices go beyond a certain limit? We don't know. What states are going to do, whether states ruled by BJP, Congress, different political parties,
even a fool can predict.
But the central excise duty is controlled by the central government, Mr. Tripathi.
So how can I speak on behalf of Congress?
The central excise is controlled by the central government, Mr. Taneja. Let me bring in Mr. Tripathi, Mr. S.C. Tripathi.
No, forget the Congress and BJP. What I'm telling you, Mr. Taneja.
One second. Mr. Tripathi, what do you believe will happen if the price of crude moves up further from what it is right now?
Well, we have seen the crude prices in India going up to $120 or $130 per barrel. The prices never went beyond 75 rupees. So I think we have experience of this, and we should revisit that experience. Of course, at that time, the margins given to oil companies, dealers, as well as the excise duty, they were reduced. So that can be examined, and that is why I say, and I think it was pointed out that the last 3 years, the bonanza that government had, that should have been used for diversifying its sources of revenue, for increasing the sources of revenue, and for also having a cushion for rainy day. But I do agree that the oil prices will not go up to that level. The supply and demand situation is quite all right, quite comfortable. But oil prices do not go by pure economics. There are geopolitical factors at this point of time. Situation in Middle East, the tension between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and also the fact that Saudi Arabia is likely to bring out a massive public issue of Saudi Aramco. So they have in their interest higher valuation for that company. So these factors will continue. But the moment prices go stabilize at a higher level of say 60 plus, then the shale oil production will increase in USA, and there are other countries also which are looking at shale oil. So I do not think the prices will really go beyond $70 on a regular basis, on a stable basis. But even $70 is a high price compared to $40 that we enjoyed. And we have to prepare ourselves for $70.
All right, Sanjay Jha, the truth is, and this is the honest truth, that there was a massive deficit that was left behind by the previous government. And like Mr. Guruswamy pointed out, the books were not very good looking, and this government inherited those bad looking books. They had to make up for it. Isn't that true, Sanjay Jha?
Faye, let me tell you, I mean, there was a fiscal deficit, but the government of the day took a call that we shall allow the consumer of India not to be made susceptible to the high global prices that were prevalent at that point of time, which is the reason why we absorbed those subsidies in our books. These are the decisions that a government of the day has to take. And I think the truth of the matter is, and this is why I believe is my fundamental objection to what the BJP has been saying publicly vis-a-vis what is actually practicable. For example, the Mr. Pradhan goes on record, so does Mr. Jaitley, to say that the GST Council should take a decision on bringing petroleum products under GST. But what Mr. Jaitley doesn't tell you is that everybody knows that this current government's fiscal deficit is already 96% of its annual budget is already utilized as of September. So you're talking about another 6 months to go with barely 4% cushion for the fiscal deficit. So how is Mr. Jaitley going to live up to that promise? Which is why I'm saying they're selling a pipe dream. This is nothing but, you'll find a constant manufacture of this point that the GST Council should take a decision where the BJP will go on the back foot and make it appear as if all political parties are stakeholders in that decision. Yes, they are. But the overwhelming decision has to come from the government. And I don't think they have the ability anymore, because they have actually imposed a regressive tax. Everybody knows that petroleum tax is a regressive tax. The common man pays the same amount of money as the richest men in the country. It is actually a tax that accentuates inequality in the country. It's very unfair that the farmer, the middle class, and the ordinary consumer is paying as much as a guy who's driving an SUV or a Mercedes or a BMW. So that's a hard reality that we need to confront. And the government today, if it's belly up, if it's financially bankrupt, and if it cannot now bring the petroleum products under GST, they need to open up. They need to be public about it, instead of trying to, kind of send subtle messages that, we are thinking about it, we are contemplating it. Because the truth is, if they don't have budgetary revenues, they are indeed in deep trouble. And
Sanjay Jha, will the Congress-led states support the movement of petrol into GST?
Just one point.
Will Congress-led states support that movement, including Karnataka?
I can tell you this for a fact, that if the GST Council were to move to bring all the petroleum products under the GST the Congress governments will have absolutely no reason to object on it at all. I think this is a decision that in the long run is good for the economy. But, you know, the point that where I differ with Mohan, I usually agree with Mohan on most topics, is the government, Mohan, has to actually get direct taxes up. It's a sign of an inefficient economy if you have to actually rely on indirect taxes like the GST, and which is being imposed on petroleum products, which is affecting the common man.
Okay. Let me just, Sanjay, I have to bring in a couple of people on the phone line. Rajesh Mehta is called in from Delhi. Rajesh Mehta, go ahead.
Yeah, good evening, Ryan.
Sure.
I just wanted to find out, the government of the day has said whenever prices go up, we will reduce the excise on petrol or diesel.
Will they do it?
Good evening.
Yes.
Correct.
I just wanted to find out.
We heard your question. Narendra Taneja, the government of the day had promised that when crude prices go up, that excise duty will be reduced. Will that promise be kept?
Once the diesel and the
well, I can tell you that this
government
is extremely sensitive to the
Yeah, Narendra Taneja, go ahead.
Can I speak?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so our government is extremely sensitive to the people's and people's economy. You know, the government would make sure if the prices go beyond a certain limit, government would make sure that the ordinary consumers' interests are protected. And number two, I want to make Mr. Sanjay Jha was saying, the problem is Congress indulges, they indulge in double speak. They say something else in GST Council meeting, and completely different thing when they come out. So that's the face of the Congress, double speak. They're known for it. They have a doctorate in that. And the same party, they're talking about who decontrolled diesel and petrol? Congress. They took the decision. And petrol accounts for hardly 10% of the total consumption. Diesel is 40%. And diesel, they took the decision to decontrol diesel. But they didn't implement that decision. They took the decision. So here we are talking of a party which basically is, double speaks. They are not sincere. They don't really, they know what they are known for. I don't want to get into that kind of debate. But all I will say, Mr. Sanjay Jha, you know very well, the people know very well how you manage your economy. If you've got any specific point, please tell us. If you have a specific suggestion, kindly tell us. And what you say and what you discuss, what you propose in the GST Council on petroleum products, if you are privy to that information, kindly share that with us. What is the view of Captain Amrinder Singh? I know he's not Congress party. Captain Amrinder Singh is Captain Amrinder Singh. He's not Congress party. But you probably know the views of at least the Chief Minister of Karnataka.
No, but hang on. Mr. Taneja, when I asked you the same question about BJP-led states, you said this is a democracy and they're free to decide, and you are not privy to that information. Now you're asking Sanjay Jha about the view of Congress-led states.
No.
Doesn't that apply both ways?
No. I'm saying in Punjab it's not the Congress party. You are right. I'm saying Captain Amrinder Singh is not Congress party. I'm just stating a fact.
Stop making ridiculous statements,
I go by the same what I said. Captain Amrinder Singh is independent.
Last word to Mohan Guruswamy. Last word to Mohan Guruswamy. Mr. Guruswamy. Mr. Guruswamy, do you believe that this government is being fair to the average Indian, given everything we have been through over the last year with GST and demonetization and job loss and vegetable inflation and LPG prices and fuel prices? Is this fair, Mr. Guruswamy?
Fair, who is the average Indian? If you talk about 60% of the country who are below the poverty line, subsistence line, and that is the average Indian. And this government has been unfair to them. It hardly spends any money on them. It doesn't spend any money on irrigation, rural sector, on anything there. The focus has been on the urban areas, and this has been the focus traditionally, more so with this government. And they can't afford to do anything else now. And they're stuck. They've given away this generous pay commission. Did anybody discuss? Did these Sanjay Jha and his party and this other party discuss about, can we afford this? We were all looking at electoral votes. They were looking for support. And they pandered. They're going to give more pensions. Now, we have a situation in this country where almost 7-8% of GDP goes off to pay salaries. And we've got a state within a state. We've got a gated community sitting in this large country. And you're talking about the average man. The average man in this country is not the average man. The average man is the upper class, the better off guys. People with, 20,000 rupees, 15,000 rupees a month income. That's not the case with 60% of the country. So you've got to give them something. You've got to give them better education, better health facilities, better irrigation facilities. You've got to get money for that. And you can't keep giving away subsidies on sugar and atta and, fertilizers for the bigger farmers and all these things, not charge for electricity, not charge for water, and let the rest of the country suffer. That's the model we've been on for a while.
Has our country's budget been mismanaged, Mr. Guruswamy?
Why don't these people have a discussion on that?
Has our country's budget been mismanaged?
Beg your pardon?
Has our country's budget been mismanaged?
Of course it's being mismanaged. Not from now, but for a long time. Have they? Of course they have been. Even more so now, but even before. They don't use opportunities. They fritter away money.
Just allow me to ask one question.
They don't have the will to tackle subsidies, undeserved subsidies. I'm in favor of education because they deserve subsidies.
Farm loan waivers. All right, we have to wrap up this discussion. Unfortunately, I have to close this because the last word is coming up. But I just want to say this to our audience. Whether crude prices go up or down, it is unlikely that you and I will be paying lower fuel prices anytime soon. The prices that you see right now, the prices that you're paying, upwards of 76, 77 in most of our cities, are here to stay. Even if the government reduces their taxes, they will do it in a manner to keep the prices the same, because nobody wants to give up on the income that they're making out of fuel prices. So this is, unfortunately, the situation that we live in. A job crisis, high inflation, high LPG prices, high fuel prices, high school fees, and no respite. Because like our experts have pointed out through the course of this discussion, while crude prices were low and the government was making ridiculous amounts of money from fuel, they should have kept that money aside so they could give it back to us when the prices came up. But that is not what happened. A lot of that money was used up. And now we do not live in a world, in a country where we can afford to reduce the prices of fuel. And that's mismanagement of the budget. The bottom line is, to governments that are going into elections over the next 2 years in various states, do you actually believe that your citizens will not find out that you've made money off our pain? And do you believe at the end of the day that the average Indian, whether below the poverty line, just above it, or middle-class taxpayer, is not going to realize the pain of Mehngai, of inflation? How are you going to manage this? How are you going to pander before the next elections? Are you just holding on to this so you can wait until just the right moment before an election to throw a biscuit at the population? In the meantime, household budgets are getting squeezed. You must know better. You must manage better. Everybody knows that if you have a certain budget, you have to manage your money better. And that's simply something you have not done. We're going to continue to demand lower fuel prices. Manage your budget, because that is our right. Thanks for watching.